All right, welcome back, everybody, to Standards of Safety podcast. We are probably going to be transitioning into the Podfathers of Safety. I think it's a pretty cool little catchy gist here. But what we got for you today, we got Dave Moore, who's got a really good story about his safety professional journey, how he got into safety and where he's at now with it. I'm just going to let him introduce himself, who he is, where he came from, and then throughout the interview, we'll just ask him some questions from here or there. So go ahead, Dave, give you a quick introduction, and we'll start the interview with you and see how you became where you're at now from where you started.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you for having me. When it comes to safety, I honestly never in my wildest dreams ever even knew too much about or even thought about safety. It was just God's intervention. I grew up, I was born in Hammond, Indiana, which is up in right across the border from Illinois, Chicagoland area. So I grew up around the Chicagoland area. When I was about 19, my parents actually were from southern part of Illinois. And so when my dad retired, he wanted to go back home. And so we all moved down to a town right across the river from St. Louis called Alton. And I spent up until age 47. So I spent a huge part of my life there in southern Illinois. And that's really where, I just finished high school. I was not a great student, to say the least. I mean, I had, ideas of being a rock star, which did not work out. So I kind of put studies in the back burner. When things weren't going to go that way, then that's when I started. I had a high school diploma, and that was it. So I started just kind of bouncing around from crappy job to crappy job. I worked commission for a while, which did not work out too well for me. I'm not very good at sales. So actually, and then a little town I saw in the paper, they were offering EMT classes for free if you would volunteer at the fire department. So I went down there.
One quick second with that. Leaving your sales job, how long were you in sales?
Maybe a year. Not more than that. I actually, what it was sales. I worked for a company that installed car glass, so door glass, windshield, glass. So if there was a break, I would replace it. But the sales part of it was I had to drive around St. Louis and go to car lots and basically show them, hey, you got a little break here, you got a break there. This is how much you charge. And if they said, no, don't worry about it, then I didn't get paid that day. So
it's kind of like an early Safe Light?
Yeah. Actually, we were kind of like a smaller version of Safe Light. But okay. It was, it's one of those kind of jobs that unless you have that, sales mentality, you would have so many cars and stuff that you would show them and they'd go, no, maybe a yes here, maybe a yes there. But at the end of the day, I did a lot of driving and didn't really make a lot of money. So
gotcha.
There, factory work, things like that. So once I saw that.
And how old were you at this time?
I was probably right out of high school, probably 18, 19.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It was just, that was curious, I wanted to ask about your sales pitch because safety, and then we can kind of, once we start learning more about your story, we'll be able to get into where you're at now real time. And we'll talk about that. Safety is sales.
Yeah.
We're selling a policy and we're selling a reason for our construction workers to buy into to being safe. So
Right.
we'll get to that. And that's why I wanted to
No,
kind of touch
no,
more
and
on the
that's,
safety side
yeah,
of it.
no, that's a perfect,
Yeah.
inlet into that, because you're right. We are sales guys. And
Yeah.
it's not something that, selling, a product and, someone saying, no, I don't want it, is a
Mm-hmm.
lot different than selling their safety.
Because it's what we're selling is intangibles,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
and then all those intangibles we sell as a safety professional. How do you actually measure that deliverable? How do you know that safety is actually it's very, very deep. But
Yeah.
go ahead. So you got into safety, or got out of sales, and you saw an EMT position
Yeah.
in the paper,
I
and
saw
how'd
that
that
there was
go?
a little bitty fire department, and they were willing to train you as an EMT if you would volunteer for their department. So I thought, well, hey, I'll give that a shot, and then I loved it. I ate it up.
What made you think you'd like that, though? Like, what were you ever family, friends, cousins, whatever? How did you know that first responder opportunity? Did you
Honestly,
feel like you needed the um, what you were looking for might be found as a first responder, somebody to help? Did you always feel like you needed, or you were that type of person that would come forward and step in when trouble happened? Or
see, that's just it. I mean, no, I didn't have that kind of, that kind of drive. All my experience up until that time was TV movies, and
yeah,
seeing, the fire department roll up and these guys jumping off and, and all this stuff. And I went, I think I could do that. I really, I would really like to do that.
so Hollywood led you into
It
real
did.
life EMT.
It did. Yeah. See, back then it was a lot different. Hollywood's a lot different
Yeah.
now. Yeah. And then, of course, with my years, I found out that a lot of the movies and TV were all bullshit. All that, most of it's not true. But no, I mean, once I got through that, actually went to a community college for that, and so as soon as I got done, they announced that they were going to start a paramedic program, and so I thought, well, okay, I mean, I do really good. Like I said, in high school, I just didn't have the drive, but for this, I did. So I studied and even overstudied a lot of times, and then so I thought, okay, I'm going to go through this paramedic program, which is 2 years. It's a big commitment. But I went through that.
The EMT is 2 years?
No, the EMT, see, there's different levels. There's an EMT basic. There's used to be, I think they're starting to phase this out, but EMT intermediate, and then a paramedic.
Okay.
So EMTP is paramedic, EMTB, which at the time I got through that. And so they said they're going to start an EMTP paramedic program. So I went, okay, I
Gotcha.
could excel through that pretty well, and not even knowing exactly what was part of the course. I just thought, okay, like I do now, blood pressures and, and transport. And it turned out to be a very challenging experience. A lot of drug calculation, because adult drug calculations are different than kid calculations, and then
You talking about doses? If you rolled up on somebody that may have OD'd, how to find that out?
Well, a lot of times, a lot of it's for like seizures or pain management. Morphine. If you have to intubate, which just means you take a tube and you put down somebody's throat so you can breathe for them. Sometimes you have to what they call knock them down or snow them, and so that means just you use a drug to make them unconscious so you can actually do that technique. If not, then they'll choke and fight you and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I found out it was a lot of cardiac. A lot of people, again, I don't want to use Hollywood and all that stuff because a lot of it's bullshit. But if you see, TV shows where they, put the little patches and the wires on somebody, that's, you either do like a 12 lead, and you can monitor and watch their heart and actually tell what their heart's doing. And then that also tells you, okay, they're in this type of distress, so that's going to help you with your medication. um, uh, uh, decisions on what you're going to give them. So again, it was very challenging. It really gave me a lot of confidence in myself because after high school, I didn't have a lot of confidence. Again, not a salesperson, did not do very good in that. I'd go home at night and going, oh my gosh, I'm terrible at this job. So once I got, even halfway, and then I finally finished the 2 years to be a paramedic and got my degree in paramedicine, I had a lot more confidence. And along with the schooling, then you do ride time on an ambulance. You do your I forget what they call it now, but you go in like different parts of the hospital. So I had to do so many hours in the ER, so many hours in the OB, watching babies being delivered. I had to do so many hours in a psych ward, which was very fun. But different different things like that. So which all correlated with the book stuff and then the hands-on stuff. So yeah, very, very challenging. And then at the time, I got a job at the hospital, so I would work my shift, and then I would go to school, go to the college, and then have a couple hours, and then do my shift. And then after my shift, then I would sleep a little bit in my truck and then go up in the hospital and do my clinical, is what they call it.
And how many hours were you awake a day through getting 3-4 hours of sleep or something?
Yeah, I'd be lucky if I got sick. That would
So what was your personal life like then?
Well,
having to study and working kind of like that? Were you single, married, running a family, or what?
Yeah, actually, I was married, and what really helped with that is you have to have support, at home.
Yeah.
And luckily, my wife was a nurse, so she had went through a lot of that, so she understood the dedication that it took to hit that goal. And so.
And it's your current wife?
It's my current wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And no, she, actually, there'd be some times where, I'd put the book, close the book up and start to watch TV, and she's like, "You think you're ready for that thing?" And just kind of.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she was like, and then she'd quiz me and stuff, and so yeah, that support, I tell you what, it really helps. If you don't have that support, you don't have somebody that's in that field, then it could get very, very strenuous on a relationship.
Yep.
But yeah, you got to have that partner that's driving you, or and at the very least understand why you're doing all this. The time away from home, things like that. For them to know that at the end it will pay off.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, and then and then once I got through the program, I thought I was the bee's knees. I thought I was the shit because I knew everything. And I tell you what, my
and this was, I guess, 2021 then.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I guess I should go through the time span. It was about 2000. Yeah, because I was a medic during 9/11. So yeah, 2000. So was that? Yeah. Anyway.
But your age, you were like 20, 21?
I was in my 20s. I was about 27. 27, 28.
27.
Yeah.
Because the reason I'm asking, I'm jumping around, but I'd like the audience to know that you're big, badass judo thrower, and you've been doing judo since you were about 20. So yeah. I was curious where'd you start training? How were you able to still train and then study for the test, the EMT, and then get all this done, and then at the same time get married, have a family, and get all this?
Right.
You were busy.
Yeah. No,
your 20s must have been the busiest time of your life.
It was, yeah. No, from age 20, 21, I was married before and had 2 daughters, and that training, going to the school a lot, teaching at certain points, that really put a stress on that marriage. But yeah, I mean, I trained in judo, taekwondo, and hapkido. Well, forever. It seemed like, I mean, hard trained for a good 10 years.
Oh, so there's the secret. That's why you're a great safety professional. Nobody fucks with you. You just like, look, dude, I'll either throw you through the wall, put you in an arm bar, or put a choke on you. You're going to put your PPE on or fill that JHA out right and explain it.
That's right. That's right. You know, now.
So that's why it's been so easy for you.
See,
I get it now.
Now at my age, I just show them old videos of me.
Yeah.
I can't actually do that stuff anymore. But I've been really blessed with a lot of different, things in my life that I got interested in. Music, again, when I was a teenager, I thought I was going to be a rock star. So love playing music, and that kind of comes back as well, and I'll explain. But yeah, with like martial arts, everything, it's like building something with like Lego. You know, each block of a part of my life added to the next block. Just for instance, I mean, as a medic, you see a lot of, bad things. You see a lot of things that kind of can disturb you. And I would always fall back on music. I'd come home, play my guitar, relax, and then try to, ease things away. Martial arts had a huge effect on me, especially now, as being an instructor when it comes to doing orientations or training someone on a machine, things like that, where in martial arts you have to break it down. You can't just say, okay, now you're going to grab them here and then this is how you're going to throw them.
Yeah.
Now, do it. They just, they stare at you like, what? So to break each little technique where this foot goes, where this foot goes, where this hand goes, where your hips are, to break all that down really helps a lot now. Because you have, as well as I do, in construction, new kids out of high school are coming in, and they have no idea what a bateau is, and not just that, but I had a kid a couple months ago. Unfortunately, he had to go, but he didn't understand why safety was so important, and which is scary. Him and I had a few conversations, and he would say, "Can I just sign a paper saying I'll be safe?" And no, that doesn't work that way.
Well, you did during orientation.
Well,
that's your...
well, yeah, but I mean, he didn't like the helmet. He didn't like the gloves. He didn't like anything, and our regulations when it came to, driving a lift or any kind of, machinery like that. He just didn't get it. And like I said, I mean, I hate for anybody to lose their job, but I would rather them lose their job than lose their life.
Or limb or somebody else's.
Right. And he was 18 years old. I mean, he had a huge life.
Yeah.
And so it just got to the point where coaching wasn't working anymore. It was time to let him go. So, no, I mean, it's like I said, with everything that I've experienced built on to what I do now in safety.
Love it. So with passing your EMT, how long were you in EMT?
EMT
before you moved to Ohio?
I was paramedic for 21 years, 22 years.
21 years, and then you moved to Ohio. And I'm going to, for our audience listening, I want to stop a little bit and interject. So where this is where I met Dave. I came in on a data center site. Dave and I, he was the medic for the general contractor. And that's how Dave and I met. And that's why I was asking how long did he was an EMT before he moved to Ohio. So you got 20 plus years as an EMT. You were on the GC site for 2.5 years in construction? right? Before you and I met, I think
Yeah.
two,
And
something like that.
and in between there, the company that I worked for, uh, I was a medic for multiple sites. I was in Austin, Texas. I was
Yep.
in southern Missouri on the pipeline. So throughout that time, I got to meet a lot of safety professionals. And so the more I talked to them, the more I went, that sounds like something that I could transition into. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
why I started studying a lot about safety, getting some certifications, things like that. Just thinking, okay, that's going to be a better opportunity for me. So yeah. So now we're caught up to when I get to Ohio and I meet you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and not to jump too much, I'm sure there's a lot of good, but just for, time preferences and whatnot, I'm sure there's a lot of good stories that would really make your transition into safety professional in the 20 years that you're an EMT, especially in the area, because you did do Chicago work or high metropolitan areas at least.
It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't in the Chicagoland area. It was more Southern Illinois, St. Louis.
So St. Louis,
Yeah.
and as we all know, St. Louis has always been rated one of the highest crime murder rate
Oh
capitas.
yeah.
So I'm sure you went on a lot of calls, did a lot of things, and that's questions I'd like to ask you about the psyche. Like what was your very first, coming from somebody that just graduated high school, no drive to go to college, but you tried sales, you tried odd ends, this and that, and then all of a sudden you got into an EMT, and then this is where you found a true passion and a love for an actual job.
Mm-hmm.
Like what was your first call? Do you remember your very first call that you went on that when after you graduated, and was it a ride on or anything like that? Like it was your call?
I remember my first one. I do remember my first one that really, was it was a cardiac arrest. It was my very first cardiac arrest. I was the lead medic on the truck, and so when we get there, it's like the biggest fear is I'm gonna forget what they taught me.
Yep.
I had this. It was a gentleman. It was a guy. I'm gonna screw this up because I'm gonna forget what to do, and that's training. No matter what it is, if it's military, if it's police officers, if it's firefighters, whatever. That's why we train all the time, because when that situation comes up, it's not like I have to think back. Okay, chapter 4, talk. It's
Yep.
that training that kicks in.
Mm-hmm. That muscle memory,
That muscle brain memory, because
practice, drill, rehearse
yes,
is.
it's a constant.
Yep.
You have mannequins that you practice intubating on. You practice on dummy arms, getting their IVs. You memorize the drugs to the point where you have dreams about them. And so when that situation comes up, but again, going to the call, knowing what it was, that was my biggest fear. Oh my gosh, I'm going to forget. But once I got there, it was like a blur. Things just started popping. And so we were able to, unfortunately, he didn't make it, but we were able to get into the hospital. We were able to sustain his life up until he got to the hospital. And so,
Yeah.
things like that, again, with 20 years, there's a lot of bad situations that I was involved in. So I like to focus on a lot of the positive. I was blessed to be able to help someone deliver actually 2 babies. And so that's the kind of stuff
That's cool.
Yeah.
2 babies,
2
huh?
babies, right.
Nice.
And
That's awesome.
yeah. And that was my just proudest moment. I remember, bringing them both in to the ER and just, I couldn't wipe the smile off my face. I was shaking.
Now,
I was shaking like a leaf, but I was.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But now at this time, is this, were you with your current wife now that's a nurse?
Yeah.
When you did this,
Yeah.
how'd she think about her being a nurse and you come home and said, I just delivered a baby?
Oh my gosh.
What she
was thrilled. Yeah. thrilled. They were
I bet.
probably about maybe 5 years in uh, in a span. I delivered one, and then 5 years later I delivered. But yeah, no, she was just through the roof.
Yeah.
That
She probably said, "Now, see, aren't you glad you didn't watch that TV and study that book when I told you
that's
to?"
right. That's right.
I helped you.
Yeah, and she never let me forget that. Yep.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, well, man, again, I'm sure there's a whole lot of like one of the biggest things I've got the respect on the first responders is the psychology of it because I've got such a soft spot for kids.
Mm.
And being a first responder is something that I've always thought that I could do
Mm-hmm.
until that first time I walk into a fire, I walk into a homicide
Right.
and there's a little baby on the floor.
Right.
That would F me up to the point that
Right.
I know I would give up. So I know that there's a lot of mental toughness, fortitude. And it's almost like you got to callous yourself and get hard, but at the same time, you still got to have that empathy to help people.
Right.
So where's that fine balance is super thin lined up.
That is why I started looking for another job because I thought, it was 19, 20 or whatever years, maybe 18, 19 years that I thought, I was just born to do this because I could have a shift with a bad call or a couple of bad calls, go home, go to bed, wake up, do it again. And I thought, well, you hear about these guys having issues and all this stuff, and I'm like, I was made to do this just for that reason. But what was happening was that I was pushing all that down, and it didn't bubble up until, like I said, about the 19th year, 20th year. Then I started having issues, nightmares. I would have the same nightmare, and then it would wake me up, and then it was happening to the point every night. So I was afraid to go to sleep because I didn't want the nightmare.
Yeah.
And so I loved what I did, but I knew it was starting to affect me. So whenever I got online and on a company that supplied paramedics for job sites, I went, okay, this is perfect. I can still be a medic, but life and death is not going to be, every second I'm waiting for something bad to happen.
Yeah.
And so that just fell right in line, and like I said, job sites you'll have, maybe a nail in a thumb or, something like that. But, I never had anybody die on me. But, like a welder burning themselves or something like that. But,
yeah,
I mean, I could handle that. But no, I mean, I didn't really realize it until my first time I had a dream. I go, okay, it's going to happen. And then as time went on, they got more frequent, to where they were almost every night. And then I started to act out the dream. And so I'd wake up, and my wife would say, "What happened?" And I go, "What do you mean? You were yelling and screaming that you needed this and you needed that. You needed a helicopter. You needed,
wow.
you were screaming that you needed, IV." And I go, "Oh my God." And she laid out exactly what my dream was. And I go, "Oh, wow." So now it's not
Holy
just
cow.
internal, now it's external. I'm actually acting out the dream, and that's when it really started to scare me. I thought, man, I can't control this. So, like I said, once I saw that online, that there was a job out there that you could be a medic and be a traveling paramedic, I jumped at that.
Yeah. Okay. And so now we start transitioning to where you and I met after all that. And one of the stories you just told, it reminded me that, one of the, so I'm originally from Texas.
No.
And we actually stayed. And it's funny, when I got the job at that data center in Ohio, me and my family relocated. You and I were actually staying in the same RV park. Mm-hmm. And I saw your truck with Texas plates at the job site.
Yeah.
Then I saw the same truck at the RV park. And then we finally met at the RV park pool one day and started talking.
Yep.
And then you and I started talking in the medic's office, and
Yeah.
it's kind of a neat how all that just kind of came to.
Yeah. And
Um,
that was a time that your coordinator had just quit.
yeah,
You'd come in kind of, irritated and stuff, that she had left and all this stuff. And I don't remember. In my head, I'm thinking I raised my hand going, "Hey, I'm ready."
yeah, yeah. And the relationship that you and I have built up to that point, was one reason. I knew your medical background. We were new to the site. You had a history with the GC.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, dude, this is an awesome opportunity. He wants to be in safety. I've got a little bit of knowledge, and I'm giving somebody an opportunity. I felt like I could help out. And
you did. Yeah, and I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, and
you took a chance on me.
I did. And but I knew it was a good one just because of your background and how our personalities clicked. I mean, we're kind of cut from the same cloth in a sense. We don't put up with shit, but we can sniff it out.
That's right.
and we like calling bullshit on people.
Yeah.
We like it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you mean to tell me you didn't know this? Oh, okay. You remember signing this paper right here?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't think I'm not coming to this argument armed, buddy. And believe me, I've got one more bullet in the chamber, and you always will.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And that's just it.
So with all those
paperwork.
Yep. And so with all that and the opportunity came, and you raised your hand that day, I spoke to my boss and we talked about it. And now here we are, 20 years later from an EMT, done few years as a traveling medic with job sites, getting out of and just for me as a first responder, I don't know how it gets separated, but that's why I'm calling it the civilian world. Mm-hmm. You're out there running the streets, helping residential people, just typical civilians.
Yeah.
Not saying that construction workers thing, but it's a site. It's one mm-hmm. place. You know what I mean? Right. And that's where you handle your skill set. So, coming into the construction safety, what did you think it was going to be like? And once you kind of figured it out from what you did as an EMT, how much change or difference was it actually?
It was quite a bit of a change. It was, whenever you're in the mindset of post-accident, you're waiting for someone to hurt,
yeah.
And that's your whole life is, you wait for those tones to go off. And then,
yep.
Switching that around to being, pre-accident. So now, it's finding things that hasn't happened, but it could happen. And, and using that to teach people, listen, working on a ladder, not facing the rungs. Okay, I get it. You've done it a lot of times, but it's that one time, that split second, that you're going to not have 3 points of contact and you're going to bust your head.
It's not the when, it's the if, or it's not the what if, it's the when. It's the when. Right?
Right. Yeah.
Because it's going to happen.
Exactly. It's going to happen. You're going to miss that step.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of focus on ergonomics. Again, you go back to ladders. You climb a ladder for 8 to 10 hours a day, your legs will feel it. And that last mm-hmm. time that you descend from a ladder, that your legs should give out. So it's, not only, okay, this is how you work off the ladder, but it's also, thinking about, okay, this person's going up and down the ladder so many times. What can I do? Or what can we do as a company? Can we lessen that potential of them, their legs giving out, or them getting too tired, or going up and down the ladder, or bending, picking things up. I don't care how old you are. And most people think, well, it's not too heavy, so it won't hurt my back. But it's not the weight of a box. It's how many boxes that you're doing at one time. That repetition, that's going to cause issue to your back.
Yeah.
So it's that constant thinking of things like that, doing your walk, doing your audit, finding things that you can fix. That was a huge turnaround for me. You know, instead of sitting in the chair waiting for somebody to say, hey, you know, Joe just hurt his back. You know, a safety professional should be out there going, okay, Joe's doing this task. We need to look at it before he gets hurt so we can fix it. So
yeah. So it's a good point. I never thought about it. As an EMT, you have to be reactive because you're not out there patrolling the street, stopping.
Yeah.
You don't have a crystal ball. You're just like, okay, we're going to have a domestic dispute here.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, you don't knock on the door going, put that piece of fried chicken down because that's going to cause you to have a heart attack. You know,
yeah.
Right.
Get that grease off the stove. You're fixing to burn yourself.
That's exactly it. Right. Yeah. Make sure your turkey is completely thawed before you put it in the grease. Yeah.
So I like that concept because now you're able. So wow, this is huge. Big psychology part of it is like you're able to take. So in a sense, being reactive has trained you a lot to be better proactive because you had to come up on the end of the things.
Yeah.
So now you can actually almost be a fortune teller.
Right.
Because you know what happened at the end of an incident when you were on the reactive side as the EMT.
Exactly.
And now you can kind of see, well, this happened. I remember when I was an EMT, this is why this happened. Yeah. So we're not going to do this now.
Well, and
it helps you to be way more proactive, I think.
Exactly. And a great example is we had some kids playing on a trampoline. One of them bounced off the side and broke their leg. So as a safety professional, you would see that trampoline and go, let's look into getting some kind of barrier or curtain around
netting
so they don't fall off of it. You know, and again, you know, as a firefighter paramedic, you don't go door to door and just go, hey, this is a wellness check, just making sure everybody's doing okay. No, you wait, or you have to wait until somebody gets hurt. So, but in safety, that's complete opposite. You know, your mindset should be, okay, today we're not going to have an accident, and what I'm going to do is do my best with the team to eliminate any possible accidents that we can. You know, we all know shit happens, but we want to lessen that shit.
Yep.
As much as we possibly can.
Yeah, the more awareness and the more they know on how to mitigate their hazards and the hierarchy of control, you know, is the best thing. You look at 90% of JHAs, PTPs, however many different acronyms they can throw out of their pre-task planning, right? Their morning huddles. Mm-hmm. You'll see 90% of them, the protection is PPE. You know, like that's one of the most overlooked tools that we have as safety professionals is teaching people what the hierarchy of control is really about and explaining the top to bottom, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it kind of led me into the other one, you know, how do you think you mentally changed from a medic as a first responder to construction safety? And I think you answered it by it took you some time, but it switched your state from reactive to being proactive. And now you're starting to think ahead and really, excuse me, and really see the things before they happen and be able to teach proactively instead of reactively. And I think when you teach proactively, that's where the sales comes in because you're trying to people that don't see that.
Well, and
you know it.
You and I have talked about this before, you know, getting people on board, especially if they're older, you know, and they've been in construction for a while. You're right. That salesman has to kick in. You know, you have to. You can't just go to someone and say, "Well, see right here, it says OSHA says this," because they will tell you, they will call you every name in the book. But if you break it down, you know, and even say, "Listen, you know, OSHA did come up with statistics saying that what you're doing is you got 85% of chance of getting hurt. So And then, you could, again, sales and how you come across it. You could say, listen, you have a lot of life, you have a lot of work in you. If you don't, think more of safety, then you're going to cut that work life short, and your family,
Yeah.
and you can't afford that. But yeah, you've got to know your audience. You can't,
Yeah.
everybody's different. You're going to approach everybody different.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Some people, they'll go, hey, you're right. You're absolutely right. Some guys, they won't. And so you have to,
Yeah.
you have to approach them. And that falls back on having a relationship with these guys.
Exactly. Because there's some guys and gals I can walk up to and say, they just got in a complacent state.
Mm-hmm.
They know the job. They're just complacent. You watching them doing it wrong. You say, hey, quit being a dumbass. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, you're right, man. Thanks.
Right.
Other guys or gals you go up to, hey, quit being a dumbass. You say,
right.
Who are you?
Right.
I'm not doing nothing wrong.
Yeah.
So knowing your audience is part of the sales game.
It is. It is, for sure.
Yeah. So as studying, as you talked about, now this is great hearing your story, by the way. I wish we had more time, but we're starting to run out. So, but, all the years that you said leaning up from high school, going into your EMT, sometimes you overstudied, you double studied, you knew the tests were this and the test was that. Now that since 19, so you've been a safety professional now for 3 years?
Coming up, yeah.
Coming up on 3 years. And since I've known you and you and I have worked together, you've since then have acquired a CHST. You've got your train the trainer in first aid CPR, which that might have grandfathered over from your medic, right? You probably never let that.
No, actually, I didn't, which was kind of bizarre now that I think back on it. I mean, being a site medic, I should have, kept the training, the trainer to trainer up.
So it did expire, and you had to you had to renew it?
Yes, it did. I actually had to go downtown to the American Heart
Red Cross,
and then get the training again. To actually train other people. Yeah.
Okay, so you got your first aid, train the trainer. You can now teach first aid CPR to people. Mm-hmm. You've got your CHST, which is a very tough test. However, I pushed the shit out of you, and you never believed me.
You did.
You never believed me. I told you had it in the bag.
Yeah, I know.
You just had to go do it.
Yeah.
But then now, are you currently working on your 500 and 510 now to teach the 10 and 30, or have you got that?
In January, I'm set up for the class for the 510 in January.
Okay. So my question to all this is that how do you feel safety professional testing is, in which you've only got the CHST now, but compared to like your EMT, is there any comparison, or are they totally apples to oranges?
Well, I mean, one's medical, obviously, and then one
right.
more safety. But intensity, no, about the same.
Yeah.
Intensity.
So let me ask it this way: do you feel like, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for saying this, but CHST don't really feel makes you a better safety professional?
No.
But do you think the test from the EMT actually taught you what to do? Because again, it goes back to our original, where actually are our deliverables? How do we know where we study the CHST? You can even get the highest of the highest as a CSP, but how do you actually show that that's coming through? Whereas an EMT test, how to put an IV in somebody, all these different, like you said, the doses between babies to infants to toddlers up to adults.
Yeah.
There's a lot of math, a lot of equations. And so there's got to be a difference between the medical field and our side of testing and what makes you.
I would say the difference is, as getting out of medic school, it was a constant, every shift I had to use it. And you're right. the CHST and on, without continuous study, continuous reminding yourself of different loads. If your company is going to do a heavy load or anything like that, to know your numbers. You can't just take a test and go, okay, got that one in the bag, and then forget about it. I mean, it's a constant. Yeah, and we fall back on PPE. You don't tell a person brand new to construction. You don't tell them once. Make sure you have your gloves, glasses, helmet, blah blah blah, and then never tell them again. That's one of those things that it's a repetition. You got to get it in your skull. You got to tattoo it in your skull. And so when it comes to, the biggest difference is just that. You don't, every day, you don't sit at your desk and do calculations on, critical lifts, or, trenches and how deep and how you slope them or, or anything like that or stuff like that. You don't do it all the time. And I think as really any profession that's going to affect someone's life, you've got to keep up on your studies. Just constantly. You don't just put the book away and so, okay, I never have to look at that book again. That study book is your reference.
Yep.
To reference.
Got it.
And again, depending on what your company mainly does, then that's what you're going to focus on for sure. I mean, if your company's not an electrical company, you're not going to focus so much maybe on electricity, but you're going to focus on what you do. But then again, you want to touch on that as well, because if you are on a construction site, you are going to be around electricity, so you need to know that too. Barriers and what kind of cal suit and all that stuff. I mean, that's always good to know. So it's a constant retraining yourself.
Yeah. Good answer. So here's a good one that I'm interested to hear from you, and then we'll start tying it up. We're about 48 minutes into it now, so I think we've got a good hour out of this. It's been very exciting and interesting. Great storyteller too, by the way. As long as I've known you,
thank you.
I didn't know you were. This was good. You must have read Dr. Seuss a lot as a kid or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. But I can't spell Dr. Seuss, but I read it.
But you're a hell of a storyteller. Very engaging. I like it. So, how do you think? Let me try to frame this properly, because we've talked a lot about going from a reactive state to a proactive state. How the people that you used to take the calls to, domestic or whatever the other cases could be, and now you're on a private property where people are coming to site, where people had to do orientation, sign NDAs, sign all that. It's more regular. It's more control. It's kind of like back in judo.
Yeah.
I've done a little jiu-jitsu in my time, and I'd rather fight in my class than out in the street, but just because of the controlled environment. Mm-hmm. So we're coming to a controlled environment now, where you're on private property. How do you feel talking to construction workers versus the civilian world, right? Has kind of changed your mind on like how to approach people.
Okay.
Because it's reactive and proactive.
Right.
So, I mean, that alone changes a big difference. So,
90 times out of 100, when you're called to someone's house, it's at their worst moment. They're either in a process of injury or some kind of medical issue, which they just want somebody. And so convincing them to go to the hospital is not that hard. I mean, if somebody's having chest pain and you say, we need to get you to the hospital, and then explaining each step, that was one of the biggest things that whenever I would have other younger paramedics ride along with me, that I would really emphasize is that you have to explain what you're doing to them every step of the risk. You can't grab somebody's arm and stick a needle in it without telling them. You can't, you take their shirt off, especially, females. You can't take their shirt off and just leave them exposed while you're putting the patches on for the monitor. You've got to explain to them step by step what you are doing. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I need to do. This is what, the next step. Now we're going to do this. Now I'm going to do this. I'm going to give you this, and this is how it's going to make you feel. Like morphine. You give morphine. It makes your arm and your body real warm. And a lot of times, if you don't tell them that, they may freak out and go, "Oh my gosh, I'm feeling really hot." Oh yeah, by the way, that's gonna, you can't backtrack on it. Oh yeah, by the way, that's gonna happen. You've got to know your stuff enough to say, okay, this is what's gonna happen. You're gonna feel a little funny, and you're gonna feel kind of warm inside, and all this other stuff. And so that's a lot easier if somebody wants you to talk to them and do stuff to them, rather than, again, you're on a construction site. Now you're pre-accident. So to convince someone that, okay, this hasn't happened, and you're 60 years old and you've been doing it the same way for 40 years, this could possibly happen if you keep doing it the way you're doing it. Now they're looking at you again. Dude, I've been doing this forever. I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. But convincing them that it is a possibility that you could fall off a ladder. If you leave the cage of your lift, your chances of falling increase multitudes. But I need to get up here. I can't. It won't go high enough. So I have to, stand on the top rope. And so now you're trying to convince them that if you do that, this could happen. And, trying to convince somebody of the future is pretty hard.
Yeah.
So, it's how you deal with the person,
Just give everybody the magic 8-ball and have them ask the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Will he fall now? Possibly. Yeah. Okay. Not likely. Oh, crap. Okay, shake it again. But, yeah, that...
Yeah,
So yeah, my sales, technique, if you want to call it sales, selling them on saving their life has really gotten better since I was 18.
Yeah. You think you could sell that window now?
I think I could. I would have to hide the BB gun.
Yeah.
You got a break right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, Dave. And that it was a great point you brought up, because you're right. Somebody at their worst moment, they're probably going to be more receptive to hearing what you have to say, especially with an authoritative initial, like EMT, medic, cop. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Even drug overdoses. It's real tempting to go, listen, Billy Bob, this is the 5th time I've come out here and saved you from dying from overdose. Stop being stupid. That's not going to help anything. You can call him stupid, but he's going to do it again. So it's just one of those things like, hey, explain to him, listen, according to everything I saw before, when I got here, you were dead. So remember, somebody out there cares about you, and if you die, they're going to be real sad. And you just have to kind of, find a way that, hopefully gets into them. But I mean, in construction, you're telling them what the future could be like, and that's hard. But you have to find a way to do it.
Yeah, that's it. You can't. It's hard to approach somebody when they're at their best state, tell them something's about to go wrong, because they're not going to believe it.
Right.
So yeah, that's an awesome. I've actually learned a couple of new approach techniques that I've never thought about before, even as long as I've been doing safety, and years and years I've been in sales.
Yeah.
I've done this a long time, and
safety,
I think just interviewing you is...
With safety and martial arts, you could never, once you get your black belt, again, you don't go, You know,
you got to keep training.
The black belt is the beginning. The white belt to black belt, that's the groundwork. Now, black belt and above, that's where you actually start your learning. And with safety, you know, any safety person out there that says, well, I'm so smart, I can't learn anything else, you're going to get somebody hurt.
Yep, exactly. Well, Dave, I appreciate your time. Interesting story.
Yeah.
Love to hear how you've come from
It's been fun.
A little high schooler in Indiana to a professional. Oh, we didn't even, and you might even be leading one of the biggest GCs in St. Louis, I hear. So congratulations, and hopefully that all works out for you.
Thank you.
Hopefully that comes too. But yeah, from where you started to where you are now, great leaps and bounds, and see nothing but bright futures for the safety world ahead of you.
All right,
maybe you'll author a book.
No,
who knows?
I don't know about that. But again, I just want to say thank you for taking a chance on me when you did, and
absolutely,
and pushing me to not be nervous about taking that, you know, tests and certifications and stuff. Yeah. And again, thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just hope the time that we were together, I was a decent enough mentor, manager in a sense that showed you a few things that a lot of people stepping into the safety world get wrong in the very beginning.
Yeah.
Which is, like you mentioned, focusing on the standard. It's important, yes, it is, but that's not what builds the culture.
Right.
So, well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the interview too. Again, this is Dave. He's a great friend of mine now, and you know, we've known each other for a while. Very interesting story from where he started to where he is now. And if you got any comments or anything, drop a comment. Let us know. You got any questions? Got anything you'd like to ask Dave? Let us know. And again, as always, thanks, and we'll hear from you in the near future.
Thank you.